So welcome everyone to Working with Commercial Kitchens, Best Practices, Growth Strategies, and Risk Management, a panel discussion on the best practices for starting, growing, and protecting your commercial kitchen related business. So for today's session, we have a bit of a mixed audience. We have a lot of business owners who are looking to get into the business and get their business started, as well as a lot of those who are already in the commercial kitchen business, either as food businesses or as owners. And so we're going to try and provide some insights that really help all of those people as you navigate some of the challenges of working in commercial kitchens, as specifically on the insurance side. That said, after our discussions, we'll open the floor to a live Q&A where you can ask more specific questions to your business. But as a quick reminder, while we're here to help and provide insights, we cannot address specific insurance type scenarios or provide any legal advice. So I like to give that disclaimer. But if you have questions throughout the session, please just drop them in the Q&A and we'll do that towards the end. I'd like to introduce our awesome panelists today. First, Ashley Colpaart is CEO of the Food Corridor, is a company dedicated to streamlining access to shared use commercial kitchens and helping food entrepreneurs scale their operations. And then Kyle Jude, who's the program manager of the Food Liability Insurance Program, or FLIP, who specializes in helping food business owners protect themselves with the right insurance coverage. And my name's Kyle Porter, and I'll be moderating today's session. So with that, let's get started. Ashley, if we can start with you, maybe give us a little background on yourself and the Food Corridor, if you would.
Sure. So thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and glad to see so many people have come today. I'm Ashley Colpaart. I am the founder and CEO of a company called the Food Corridor. We are a software as a service platform for owners and operators of shared use kitchens to manage their operations more efficiently. So we help them with scheduling and booking of a multi-tenant situation in a shared kitchen, as well as supporting compliance with document storage. So helping the food business put their business license and their insurance and their food handler card on the platform, as well as streamlined billing for the kitchen operator so that the food business can book the time in the kitchen, get their invoice, have accurate invoicing, and be able to manage their business from the platform. So we have 450 shared use kitchens across the US and in Canada that use our software. And on average, that each kitchen represents about a relationship with about 50 food businesses. So the businesses that work out of these shared spaces are chefs, caterers, food trucks, product manufacturers, many of the folks that are probably on this call today, our favorite type of people, which are food entrepreneurs. So that's the company. We also have a site called The Kitchen Door where food businesses that are looking for shared kitchens can search by zip code and find access to shared use kitchens that are renting in their area. Another thing that I do in my spare time, which there's not a lot of it, but I'm also a coordinator for the Northwest Rocky Mountain Regional Food Business Center, which represents 8 states in the Northwest Rocky Mountain region. And I co-lead a theme team for that that food business center on connecting and scaling food entrepreneurs. So we help connect food entrepreneurs with access to technical assistance and funding so that they can make their dreams a reality and grow and scale food businesses.
I love that. And I got to tell everybody, we did a little bit of a prep call, and you all are lucky to be hearing from Ashley today. So thank you for taking the time. Again, we have kind of a mixed audience today. So for those who are very involved in the industry so far, kind of bear with us. But I'm wondering, Ashley, if you could just give us a quick overview on the basics. Like you started to mention them. What are the most common types of food businesses that use commercial kitchens? Kind of run us through that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. A lot of our owners and operators of shared use kitchens that come to us looking for a demo and wanting to explore our software were started as food entrepreneurs themselves. So they started their own food business, whether it's a catering company, they may have started as a food truck and grew, or they may be a product manufacturer, so making a CPG product, which is a consumer packaged good that maybe they started at the farmer's market and they began to grow and scale. Many of them started out in shared use kitchens or commissary kitchens, as they're also called. and then grew so much that they ended up accessing their own space, but they had underutilized capacity that they can then rent back out to other food entrepreneurs. So we started seeing this like cyclical cycle with folks. So the food entrepreneurs are a large array of folks. There's a lot of creativity in food. And so, yeah, personal chefs, a lot of meal kit delivery companies, chocolate makers, baked goods, value-added products. So sometimes we'll see farmers that need access to commercial kitchen space because they produced a bumper crop of squash or something that needs to be pickled, and they'll rent commercial kitchen space so that they can sell that food direct to consumer.
I think what I've learned already in talking with you is how kind of integral this commercial kitchen space is to the food industry as a whole. So I think a lot of people on the call and those who work with Flip, might be looking at this as a path towards growing their business. And so I guess my question, and again, I'm not an expert in this, so I appreciate all that you're sharing. I was looking into it. Is there a difference between the types of, you mentioned share use, commissary. I know those are kind of interchangeable, but is there like, can you run us through what are the kind of different types of shared or commercial kitchens that businesses might look for to work with?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because I'm a nerd. I actually wrote my dissertation on shared use kitchens. So in doing so, there wasn't a lot of terminology on like what these things are, and so we kind of had to do a lot of research to figure out what the types were. So when we say shared use kitchen, we say that as like an umbrella term for a physical production space that's rented out to multiple tenants. So that's kind of the broadest way of looking at the umbrella. Under that umbrella, there are different types of shared use kitchens, and they usually are predicated on what types of renters rent from those kitchens. So you might find a food truck commissary or a food
Hmm.
truck shared kitchen. That would be a commissary or shared use kitchens that's focused specifically on the needs of food trucks. We also have baking kitchens, which are focused on the infrastructure and the specific equipment needed for baking kitchens, catering kitchens. Other terms that you'll see, which you mentioned are kind of interchangeable, are commissary kitchen. So most food businesses, when they first decide that they want to actually make a go and make mom's, salsa recipe or grandma's mole recipe, and they want to sell legally to consumers, they go to the health department, and the health department's like, well, you need a commissary agreement. And most people are like, what does that mean? What is that? That means a relationship, a formal relationship that you have with a commercial production facility that makes you a legal business operating in that facility. So the other type that we often hear is called an incubator kitchen. And what that is a shared use space that sells access to commercial facilities. But in addition to offering those facilities, they also help to incubate businesses, meaning that there are wraparound services that are offered to these food businesses to help them with business planning, to help them with access to retail and selling and marketing and all of the other things that we know come along with growing a food business. Most of us know like it starts with making the food, but then you realize really quickly, wow, there's a lot of other things now I have to do as a business owner. So it just kind of grows from there.
And for those, again, kind of from the basics, how would you go about choosing which one's the right one for you? I mean, in your experience, do you just kind of search it, or for say there's someone on the call who's a food truck and they're just about to buy one. How do you look for that food truck one, or does it really matter? Or
So when you're looking for your commissary kitchen or your home kitchen where you're going to start your business, it's like anything. You need to be prepared to kind of answer some questions.
Mhm.
Food Corridor hosts a site called the Kitchen Door, and the Kitchen Door is a national database of commercial kitchens that are available to rent. And so it's a listing platform or a directory where you can search by location. So you can search by zip code or you can search by city and see the different kitchens in your area. I think the first thing people look for is location. They want something that's close to home because they don't want to have to travel far and add to the business cost of production by having to, drive somewhere to produce and then drive really far away. So location tends to be one of the first primary things that folks look for. And then I think one of the bigger ones people like to look for is the cleanliness of the space. So making sure that the kitchen that you're operating in takes food safety and cleanliness seriously, because if you're going to be operating out of that space and your business is tied into that business, you want to make sure that it's a clean facility. And you want to make sure that the owner is available and responsive to your needs, so that communication is dialed in and that relationship can start forming.
That makes total sense. And again, a lot of this is about for those who want to get into the business. So definitely drop those questions in. If you're already an operator and you want to hear more about your operation, drop those questions in. Say I'm ready to jump into it, but I've selected, I want to go meet with this commercial kitchen. Can you give any advice of where a business should be in preparation for those meetings? And I think you even have some steps by that you've shared. But if you could share with our audience, like what do I need to be prepared if I'm a food business getting ready to meet with a commercial kitchen?
Yeah, so you can imagine that the owner and operator of these kitchens, they get the very excited entrepreneur that's ready to jump into their business coming to their door, and they're like, I want to start a food business. And it's kind of like, great. Have you done these things? So there are things that the shared kitchen operator is going to want to know or see from you as the entrepreneur, that you are prepared to start renting space from them. Some of those things are, do you have a business plan? And I know that sounds like scary, and maybe you have thought about it in your head, but have you written down what you're producing, how you're going to produce it, what ingredients that you plan on using? Have you run your cost of goods sold for what you're planning on selling that for? Do you have sales channels that you've thought about? Do you plan to sell at the farmer's market? Do you plan to sell at a restaurant? Do you plan to sell direct to consumer? Like what are your channels that you're looking to sell through? Have you thought about your competitors? Have you thought about your ingredients? Have you just really thought through what it's going to take for you to actually get this business off the ground? Most operators are going to want to see that you've put some thought into the game and are ready to put some skin into the game into your own business. The next thing is kind of, are you legal to sell? So do you have a business license? Like, are you legal to actually sell this food? Because you're going to need your business license in order to start renting from the kitchen. And then when you're ready to start, the kitchen operator is really going to need to know what your needs are. And I think for a new food business, this is probably one of the hardest things to get right. They're going to ask you how many hours that you want to rent from the kitchen in that month or in that week. And what your budget is. So what have you thought about what it's going to cost for you to actually rent this space out? One thing to know also is like these are not nonprofit organizations. These kitchens are business owners themselves, and they are in the business of renting out commercial kitchen space to you so that you don't have to go and take on all of the expenses yourself. So you're not having to lease a facility. So you're not having to pay the electric and the gas and the utility bills, so that you're not having to pay for maintenance on equipment, so that you're not having to set up pest control and chemical control and all the things that come along with the commercial space. So you accessing this infrastructure is a service, and they're providing a service to you. So you really need to think about what's the value of that service to you compared to you going out and trying to do that on your own. So really kind of think about that values transfer and what that cost is going to mean to you. And then the biggest thing, which Kyle will probably want to jump in here, is, do you have food liability insurance? So most shared kitchen operators are going to ask that you have a business license, food liability insurance, and then that you're food safety ready, that you have thought about food safety from a legal standpoint and have taken a course in food production at a commercial level. So having a food handler card is what they call it.
Yeah, I think that's all really good advice, and we'll definitely jump into the insurance side. I know a lot of people are here for that, and it's a tricky world, and that's why we brought in the experts. But I love what you said about it's a mutual relationship. I always say business dealing should be mutual and benefit both parties. It's got to be very much like that, right? You're both there to run a business, so working as a partnership probably very important. I'm curious, and I don't know if our audience is, but I am, if there's different types of models within kitchens, like is there, ones that are specific to certain ingredients? Is there different pricing models? I'm just curious from the landscape of understanding it.
Yeah. So there's a wide variety of operating practices. Some of those over the years have become more standardized. So many of the shared kitchens or commercial kitchens, commissary kitchens will have a large variety of renters. So they have chefs, caterers, food trucks, product manufacturers, all different variety. And the reason that they do that is because most food entrepreneurs need a specific time in the kitchen. So bakers tend to want to bake bread and do baking really early in the morning and be done by mid-morning. That's when maybe some food trucks or the lunch rush can come in the middays and take up those hours. In the evening, there might be some delivery only folks that are doing kind of delivery direct from the kitchen. And then on the weekends, you'll see more of the food trucks and the caterers because they're covering events. And so for a shared kitchen to be successful, the diversity of renters is actually critical to increasing the percent utilization in that space and making a viable shared kitchen model work. So they're usually like a large array of different types of renters in those space. Some do specialize, and I did mention like a food truck commissary is an example of that. Some also are focus on specific production type or allergens. So you might have a gluten-free commissary or gluten-free room within a commissary that is for folks that are focused on gluten-free product. Additionally, some may be USDA certified, meaning that the meat production can happen in those spaces. So a lot of it would have to do with food safety, types of products, and or types of food business renting from those spaces.
That's really helpful. And so I wonder, say I've identified a few or I've gotten in, this is my one. Can you give any tips or best practices on that rental agreement? Any red flags to look out for, or tell us about that process when you get into an agreement with a kitchen?
Yeah, so typically the kitchen administrator will have you fill out an application to make sure you're a good fit. They're going to ask you questions about what hours you need, what your budget is, what you're making, are you food safety trained, all the things that I went over before. When they decide that you're a good fit, they then will ask you to commit to a monthly plan. So typically there's a minimum. So that it's kind of like paying rent or having a lease agreement where you pay a minimum to get access to the kitchen, and then you can book time in the kitchen to bill against that monthly budget that you've committed to. And book hours in the kitchen. So there's a couple different ways that kitchens do this. Some will do hourly, where it's just pop in here and there, and you can do hourly booking throughout the month. Others will do monthly billing plans where maybe you commit to 30 hours in the kitchen and then you can book on the calendars and come in during the shift that you've booked. Some will do drop-ins, and then others require kind of a more of a long-term commitment or a long-term lease, depending on what type of space it is.
Got it. So it's pretty normal to see minimums in there. Again, it's a business, they have to make money.
Yeah,
That's
their cash flows, right? They need to make sure they can cover their base business, and then oftentimes, just to make a little note is, you'll commit to a certain minimum, and then after you hit that minimum, there'll be an hourly rate that kicks in, and you can adjust your billing plans. So typically in these kitchens, the more hours you commit to, the lower your hourly rate is going to be.
yeah, from a bulk standpoint, that makes sense as well. So just having just a breadth of experience in this, I'm wondering if you can share any mishaps or things that you've seen kind of consistently over time that food entrepreneurs have when they're working with commercial kitchens that I might share with the audience to be like, don't do this, guys, or maybe do this.
It's funny you mentioned that. So, I work with mostly the owners and operators of these kitchens, and oftentimes they say sometimes it can feel like a kindergarten that you're kind of like always reminding people about the rules. Don't touch that, and make sure you wash your hands, and stay clean. You have the one thing to remember is you're in a shared space. You're sharing your space, and this shared asset with other business owners. So I think it's kind of like the rules of a kindergarten. It's kind of like do unto others as you do unto them. Respect people, communicate clearly with people, don't touch things that aren't yours, don't take things that aren't yours, don't do things that put other people or their business at risk. So make sure you're following the policies and procedures of a kitchen and being, responsible for your holding up your end of the bargain. So when you do sign a a contract with one of these kitchens in the policy procedure manual, you are responsible for your space. You are responsible for storage, legal or sorry, food compliant storage of your stuff in this space, so that the kitchen stays compliant, and you're responsible for holding up your end of that bargain. You're responsible for food safety and practicing food safety standards. And you're responsible for just following the rules and keeping everybody safe. And so just holding up your end of the bargain makes you a really good renter and will keep that relationship healthy, not only between you and the owner and operator of that kitchen, but between you and everyone else that operates in that kitchen. We talk a lot about creating shared kitchen culture, and some kitchens are more collaborative than others. Some will be like, hey, there's a food truck rally. You guys should come to this rally, and they'll share. Or hey, can I buy some of your salsa to use on my food truck? And there'll be a lot of collaboration that can happen in these spaces. But you really want to find a space culturally that works for you and your business.
That makes total sense. And it's people tend to think that they're the only ones in the world and their business is the most important, but you got to be a good player for the whole space and understand everybody's got a business to run and they're all trying to do good. And that makes total sense. We've already seen a few questions, and we'll get to the questions at the end, but I know that the regulations vary across the states of if you have to work with commercial kitchen or if you can start at home in like cottage food business, I believe it's called, or something to that effect. At what point do you recommend, okay, now is the time to really start looking at a commercial kitchen space rental as my business grows, or just what's your advice to that?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is a inflection point that's important in understanding. I think most food businesses start at home. You start making something and somebody tells you, man, you make the best salsa, mole, chocolate, like whatever it is. And somebody tells you that, and you get the idea, hey, you're right. I am really good at doing this. I'm going to turn this into a business. So most businesses start at home. The cottage foods laws that you are referring to are essentially food safety and business laws. Most states have a cottage foods law. And what that means is that you can start a food business at home. Within certain parameters. So the parameters for cottage foods businesses are typically the types of products that you can produce. So typically those foods are going to be low risk products, meaning that they're low water or low protein content. So usually they're dry goods, baked goods, things that are in packages, things that are shelf stable and don't require refrigeration. Those are the types of food that can be produced legally at home in most states. The other limitations for cottage foods producers, besides the type of food that you can produce, is revenue based. So you can sell direct to consumers, meaning that I can sell directly to a person, but I can't sell to a distributor or somebody else that's going to distribute my product. I have to have that physical transaction happen between me and the person I'm selling to. And then the amount of money or the amount of revenue that you can capture for selling your product is also capped. So naturally, this leads to, if I am a cottage foods producer and I sell cookies and I sell them direct to consumer, and my cookies are really starting to take off, and I'm selling at the farmer's market, and they're flying off the shelves, and it's going well and my revenues are going up. I feel this inflection point naturally because the scale gets hard, meaning that the amount of product that I can produce in my home starts getting capped because I'm using my home mixer and I'm using my home storage, and I'm using, the scale of things at home is different than the scale of things in a commercial kitchen space. So when you access a commercial kitchen space, all of a sudden your home mixer goes from being a quart to being, potentially a Hobart mixer. And now I can scale up to making 500 cookies where I used to only be able to make 50. And so that scale is really when you start thinking about needing access to commercial kitchen space if you're cooking at home. If you're not cooking one of these, sorry, I'll just finish real quick.
Oh, no, please.
If you're not cooking one of these, or if you don't fall under cottage foods and you're producing a food that's a hot food or needing to be refrigerated, or is like a ready to serve type meal, all of those types of foods, because they are more risky foods, will need to be produced in a commercial kitchen wouldn't qualify for cooking at home.
That's what I was curious, and so I'm sure everybody's trying to figure out when is the right time, depending on all these. And I wanted to put it, I'll drop it in the chat here that the Food Corridor has put together this awesome toolkit that has just, I mean, you said it took almost 2 years to pull together, so it is a wealth of knowledge on the subject, and I dropped it into the chat for everyone. Or now I did. That yeah, check it out because I think yeah, trying to decide when is the right time. What's some of the costs that you want to look at and making that big leap. We've already seen multiple questions about it, so we'll talk about it probably more at the end. But really understanding when's the right time to look at commercial kitchens, take my business to the next level, and what do I need, and how do I make the leap without risking it all, right? And it's probably not the easiest thing. So, before we kind of dive into the risk side and the insurance side, I did have just because I'm curious. Give us your take on the state of the industry. I know there's a major consumer demand push for localized food and that, and are we seeing that across? Is it a really exciting time? Is it a cautious time? We know that the economic world right now is a little volatile, so just curious on your take on that.
Yeah, so we started Food Corridor 9 years ago, so we're almost a decade old, which is wild and crazy to me. And you can see the growth
Congrats, that's
that come.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah, thank you. And we've seen the industry change so much. A lot of that's like standards of practice, but we are seeing growth happening. So people, it's kind of like one of these things where it's an idea whose time has come. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but it's kind of like, we rent space for gym equipment because gym equipment's super expensive. It's very bulky. You can't fit it in your house. So we access a gym through a membership, and I can show up and use that infrastructure, and then I can leave. And it's membership based. That's essentially what these commercial kitchens are. You're accessing this infrastructure that you can't keep at home and that you need access to legally for your business. And so the model has really caught on. And to your point about consumer demand, people really do care about where their food is coming from and want to support local businesses. In addition, during COVID, along with everyone, we saw the great pause where everything shut down, and it was kind of like, oh gosh, what's going to happen? It was interesting in our industry because, yeah, we did see the great pause, but after that, we actually saw a huge spike in the number of people who started food businesses. There were more people getting into the industry. And I think it's because food is relational and accessible, and a lot of people have food knowledge and food skills culturally from being passed down from generations or from family. And so there's like a love of food that people have. It's why the Food Network is so popular, and so people connect through food. But also during the recession and when after COVID is, a lot of people got laid off, and they were kind of like, what am I going to do to support my family? And these are food businesses tend to be pretty easy to start. The sad thing about food businesses is they are very risky, and the failure rate is really high. So you really want to be thinking about business fundamentals from the beginning on what are your cost of goods sold, where are you going to sell, all those things that I talked about the business plan. The reason why a shared kitchen operator is going to ask you about that is because, they see churn. They see turnover all the time of people that are wide-eyed and bushy-tailed. I'm going to start a food business, and it's very exciting. But when it comes down to brass tacks, growing and scaling a food business is very difficult, and you have to kind of adapt with the times and what's happening in the ecosystem, and kind of follow all the food safety rules and all the things. So it can be really challenging. It takes a certain kind of entrepreneur to really make it.
Yeah, but positive still
Totally.
that there is obviously you're very passionate about the industry and that comes through and we know a lot of people on this call and a lot of the flip consumer or insurees are passionate about their business and growing their business. That's why we're here to provide some guidance and boost you all up as best possible. But that all said, let's talk about the risks a little bit. If I can, I'll go over to you, Kyle. Why don't you give us a rundown? Insurance isn't the most fun topic, and we understand that, but a very important topic. And Ashley already kind of hit on that. And looking at your business, and one of my favorite things in doing these webinars is hearing that insurance is about passing that risk on, right? To how much risk do you want to take on yourself, or how much risk do you want to pass on to someone else? And so, jumping over to you, Kyle, why don't you start us off at thinking of the commercial kitchen space? What are policy in general, what are the policy types that a business owner should be thinking about if they're going to go work in a commercial kitchen or start their business and they want to work in a commercial kitchen?
Yeah, so I know we have both those food operators that are renting space in commercial kitchens as well as commercial kitchen operators and owners here. And there are some similarities in the policy types that you would need
Mhm.
from each, such as a general liability policy. This protects you against claims of bodily injury and property damage from a third party. Um, Property damage or property damage insurance. So do you if you're a commissary kitchen owner, you would probably need, insurance on the actual physical property. So you need commercial property insurance, as well as probably some inland marine coverage to cover your, tools and equipment. Well, where if you're a renter, you would need damage to rented premise coverage, as well as inland marine coverage for those items that you're storing in the commercial kitchen and taking in and out with you. Um, if you have employees, workers' compensations, it's regulated and required in almost every state. If you do have employees, workers' compensation is almost a must. Um, and then there's some other ones out there that, you might not need depending on the type of business you are, but like if you are one of those commercial kitchens that does co-packing, or you're a food product manufacturer, product recall insurance. So let's say some of your product is tainted and you have to recall your product. That's very important to look into. Um, but as you can see here, there's so many different types of insurance that you might need, and not one individual policy is going to cover you for everything. So you might hear the term, a package policy or a package insurance. And that's basically taking your general liability, your property insurance, workers' compensation, cyber liability if you deal with, other people's personal information, and putting those all into a bundle package for you and selling you a package.
Interesting. So a lot of policies, and I like this package idea because obviously everybody wants protection. How would one go about going, okay, here's my business. Well, here's, I guess, what my risks are. How do I choose these policies? I mean, and is that working with someone? Is there resources online? Kind of guide our audience into to do that scary insurance audit. Am I protected?
Well, the link that you just shared, that Ashley, painstakingly put together for everybody, is a great resource. If you look through there, they list, all sorts of different, risks that you might, have in your business, and the type of potential protection or mitigation that you can use to
Mhm.
protect against a loss in that type. Also, consult your, local sales agent, your insurance sales agent, or a commercial sales agent with a big carrier. They are licensed and they should know the type of protection that you need, and they are there to counsel you. So don't hesitate to call someone, or be afraid to reach out if you don't know, because there are professionals in the industry that can help monitor, guide you towards what you need to protect your business.
Yeah, I'd also just add to that, Kyle. It kind of connected to like, do you understand your business? Because the kind of questions that a provider is going to ask you are similar to the business model questions. Like, do you know what your ingredients are? How do you produce your food? Where are you distributing your food? Like, are you, knowing your business inside and out and having thought through that is only going to help you have that conversation with your provider and be able to give them insight into your business so they know what kind of coverage will work for your business, because all food businesses are so different.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. Yeah, without knowing, your game plan for your individual business, what you want to accomplish, if you're looking to grow in that particular year, if you want to change products potentially, without knowing all those things,
Yeah.
it's really hard for a professional to, guide you to the right information.
Yeah, and another fabulous resource from the food corridor we just dropped into the chat is those 8 questions, kind of right, that she laid out of like the things to know about your business when starting talking to a commercial kitchen, talking about insurance, and what to kind of think about as you head into these various roads. I'm curious, maybe for or either of you, is there any kind of that one coverage that you see people maybe skipping or don't know that they don't have or need, that to really highlight as one that jumped out to me? The reason I ask is that product recall insurance. I've seen it in the news, and we all hear product recalls. Maybe that's not an example, maybe everybody has, but I'm curious if there's any in your experience ones that it's like, we do recommend this one, or as a commercial kitchen operator, or someone working in a commercial kitchen, that we probably need this one.
The one that 99.9% of people out there are going to need is general liability insurance.
Sure.
Everybody is going to need that. And then, from there, it really depends on your business and how you're going to run your business. And, if you're a food truck operator, for instance, you're going to need commercial auto, where someone that's, not doing that and they're having a co-packer and they're, selling their product online, they probably don't need a commercial auto policy. So general liability, number one.
Always the number one.
And then it really is a tailored fit to your business needs from there, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the recall one is interesting too. You kind of think about the more distribution of your product that you have, the riskier that your business is for a recall. So as you're growing, these are things you might want to start thinking about adding. Also, the types of food that you produce and making sure that you're following your HACCP plan and your kill steps, and making sure that you're following food safety. Like, there's a reason, like there's tons of research around food safety. They don't make you take a food handler card just to be mean, or a food handling course just to be mean. They're doing that for your protection. They're doing that so you understand how to safely produce food, so that you don't make people sick, so that you don't have to face a recall or put your business on put your livelihood on the line because you messed up with the kill step in production of your food. And so this isn't to be punitive or to be mean, it's to give you access to knowledge so that you can protect yourself. And so I think, sometimes people think, oh, I have to jump through all these hoops and it's annoying. It's like, from a business standpoint, you should, want to do things in the right way to protect yourself and your livelihood.
It's great advice. And go ahead, Kyle.
Oh, I was going to say, one thing that a lot of people don't think about as well is, professional liability insurance, especially, Ashley mentioned that some of these, incubator commercial kitchens, they do training and some other things that help small businesses grow. If you're operating in that type of space, whether it's you are the operator and you're doing any sort of, teaching, or let's say you're a small food business and on the side you do teaching classes, professional liability insurance is something that you definitely want to take a look at to protect you.
I've heard of that as well. And we're actually looking at doing a webinar on nutritional consulting and things like that. It's a whole nother ballgame, right? And so don't be doing that. I'm going to drop in the chat for everyone as well. We actually just put out as Flip our food economic state of the industry report. And in it, we kind of examined a lot of this. We even looked at the commercial kitchen space, but I bring it up because we did an analysis of what the claims of insurance types were. And one of them that really struck me was this customer related claim, right? If you got a customer sick, that is a thing. And, sometimes no fault. And another one is accident causing damage. That was the number one claim type is accidents happen and causing damage of other people's property. That's a major thing in theft and fire. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting to what you were saying is there's things I've always heard that liability insurance or your general liability is for third-party related claims, and then everything else you want to protect yourself, which I thought was really interesting. Wondering, Kyle, if you have any examples, or either of you actually, but any examples of types of claims or things that happen in a commercial kitchen that you're like, oh man, that could happen to me, just to bring in this insurance conversation.
Well, I had one, that came up recently with one of our insureds, and they were working in a commercial kitchen. And there was a tilt skillet that wasn't properly maintained. And it caused a small explosion and, ended up severely burning 3 people. And just on top of, the physical damage that was done, it was $1 million payout for that business. And luckily they had insurance, but if they didn't have insurance, that's $1 million that would have had to somehow come out of their pocket.
Yeah, it's your business and that risk. No, I think, go ahead, Ashley, did you?
Yeah, I was also going to say like the in a shared kitchen, it's also disruptive to the other businesses, right? So there's an accident, now the kitchen shut down because of this accident. Now other people can't access the kitchen. The one we see the most in shared kitchens is the walk-in goes down. It's like who's responsible now? It's like, oh, all the food, that you had cold storage and now everybody's food, so oftentimes the shared kitchen operator will take on the responsibility of covering the walk-in kitchen or the walk-in cooler. If anything goes down, that they will pay out to their renters that lost product.
That was our number 4 claim type, was food spoilage. So again, these things are you think of, you're like, oh, would insurance even look at that? There are ways to mitigate this risk through certain insurance policies, and I think that that's what we're trying to get here. And I always share this story that on one of these webinars we were speaking, and the recommendation was to treat your insurance, which sounds silly, but to treat it like your health and to do a yearly check of your insurance, because your business changes. And your business, you could have grown, you could have gotten a second truck, you could have added new products, whatever it might be. Your business changes every year, and every year you need to do a checkup with your insurance provider, whoever it might be, to look at, am I properly insured, just like a health checkup? Because again, you might think, well, that doesn't change much. I'm covered in this kind of umbrella policy, but you've got to be very clear with your insurance provider what your business is and what you're doing, to mitigate that risk, to pass on that risk. So I thought that was a really interesting thing I learned. Talk a little bit more about the negative. Anything, Ashley or Kyle, further you'd share some of those risks that are kind of specific to commercial kitchen, people working in them or operators, and then what you might do to mitigate some of those risks, or just any other examples you might have to put you on the spot?
I mean, risk mitigation is one of the most important things you can do as a business owner. When you are in a shared space like that, cleanliness is key. You need to make sure that you're properly labeling and storing your food products. You need to make sure that you're cleaning up after yourself, because you don't know what's coming in there after you and what they're potentially making. So for instance, we had a baker in a commercial kitchen space, and they were baking chocolate chip cookies. Well, the person before them, I guess, was doing something with peanut butter, and there was some peanut butter residue left over, and it got mixed into their cookies, and someone had a peanut allergy, and there's a lawsuit right there for you. So cleanliness is very important. Depending on the type of operations are going on in your commercial kitchen, you want to make sure, like if you were the kitchen operator, you want to make sure that you have proper fire suppression systems installed. If you have open flame cooking or anything of that sort. And another thing that I commonly see is people underinsuring their equipment. A commercial, mixer is not cheap. And if you were to have something happen to it and it gets damaged, the cost to replace that, you want to make sure that you're insuring it for the proper amount.
Yeah, well, that's fair. Anything
And
to
then I
add?
would speak, to stay on the negative here is like,
It's we got to have the conversation.
I know. I don't know if any of you noticed, but there's been a lot of disasters, flooding, hurricane, tornado, these types of things. So a lot of our kitchen clients have disaster policies to prevent the business from or to protect the business in case of a disaster. So that's becoming more and more critical.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I think kind of the takeaway, some of the resources that we've dropped into this chat are really, really fabulous from the food corridor. So thank you for sharing those with us in terms of risk mitigation, looking at insurances. But I always like to give this plug because they support these webinars. But Flip is really understands this business. And I think that that's why Food Corridor did partner with Flip originally, is they really understand the food business operator. Again, reach out to them, email them, talk to somebody on their customer team, so to make sure that you're protected in your insurance, especially as your business grows or changes. You got to make sure. Anything else to add on the insurance side of things? from either of you? I know we've kind of covered it, but I know it's a passionate topic of both of yours.
I would just
Um,
say to like think about it as a patchwork. Every business is different, but like the coverage over coverage, it kind of is like this covers that, but this isn't covered. So make sure you have this to kind of layer, and that layering is kind of like a the patchwork to make sure that everything is covered.
Great. We also had in our topics on the positive side to talk about some growth stuff. We've actually kind of already run a little long, and I do want to get to some of these questions, but I highly encourage you to check out both of the resources that we've shared there, the Flip Food and Beverage Industry Trends and Statistics. We've got a whole section on digital marketing trends, ways that we're seeing success, food businesses are seeing success in marketing themselves, as well as the checklist or toolkit, I believe Food Corridor calls it. They have a whole marketing section and ideas of ways to promote your businesses and grow. I'll give you the really top line highlights as digital marketing is still key, but we're getting back to that community-based really focus on, especially in this side of the business, is that community, right? Getting into in-person events, doing anything that you can to get your name out there and your products out there in front of your local community, because more and more of these digital marketing products aren't as geographically based, is what we found, and that they're very broad, and you've got somebody seeing your message in a completely different state. Well, that doesn't necessarily help your food business unless you're an online retailer, and obviously that's a different story. But really getting involved in the community, showcasing your food, something that we've seen is free samples is a huge thing. I mean, just little things that you can do, pop-up events to get out there into your community is a really great way to promote your brand. Of course, an online presence is still key. But it's kind of in a reverse funnel way, is once they hear of you, they will research you online. So make sure that online presence is nice, the reviews are good and things like that. But that's not necessarily the best, or from our research was the best way to promote your business is more in person. So I wanted to share that from the growth side of things. Check out those resources, they're very interesting. Either of you have any closing thoughts before we get into some questions on the commercial kitchen space, things that we've heard today, things that I didn't cover that probably skipped over for time's sake? Anything, we'll start with you, Kyle, anything to share on the closing side of things?
I just want to say for those that are, graduating and moving into a commercial kitchen space, I want to say congratulations to you because, your business is growing and that's a success. And I know that growth can sometimes be scary and you might not know what you need until it's too late, but always reach out for help. Don't be afraid to. There are resources there. There are professionals in the insurance industry, or whether you're looking at the food corridor for resources, there are people here that can help you. So don't be afraid to ask.
I love that. That's awesome. Ashley, anything to share?
Yeah, I think I was just gonna kind of tether off of what you were saying, Kyle. Is like the thing about the food industry that's special, that's different than any other industry, is that food is relational at its core. Like we break bread together and we share meals together, and food is just like such a part of our lives. And so when you have a food business being relational and in the spaces that you choose to rent from and the people that you come in contact with, the people that you sell to, it is a more intimate style business. And I just think that I really appreciated your insight on that, because I do think that focusing on your local community and building your brand locally is the way to go.
Yeah, we found, we did a nationwide survey of diners, and we found that authenticity and quality severely outweigh in terms of preference, cost, and convenience, which I thought was so interesting in the food business. You would think, oh, I want something fast and cheap and whatever, and that's not the case anymore. You want this kind of authenticity and quality that I think people, especially in the small business realm, really can thrive on.
Yeah.
I
It's
love that.
interesting, actually. You mentioned trends earlier. So during COVID, there was this huge trend of ghost kitchens, which is
Mhm.
essentially like, what is a ghost kitchen? Essentially, a ghost kitchen is somebody that rents a commercial kitchen space or has a commercial kitchen space and is selling direct to consumer on one of the delivery apps. So they have an online store essentially on DoorDash or Uber Eats or one of these stores, and they're cooking it in a commercial kitchen, and then the delivery driver is coming to that space and dropping it off. So there's not an in-house, it's not an in-house restaurant. You can't go sit down, you can't meet the
Experience.
person. Yeah, it's all online. And that kind of took off. Funding took off for this model during COVID, but we've seen so many of those businesses shutter because they don't have relationships. They don't have a storefront. They don't know, no one knows who they are. And consumers are kind of like, I don't know, like, what is this like online thing? Where are they producing this food? Like the consumer themselves don't want to feel that authenticity and connection with the brand. And the quality also, I think with delivery is really hard to get your quality like dialed in and locked in. And so for both of those reasons, the authenticity and the quality, most of these ghost kitchen concepts have shuttered.
Yeah, no, it was very interesting from our consumer survey. And to wrap us up in a positive note, again, take a look at the report is the food industry is on its way up. And what do we mean by that is consumer spending has never been higher. Most people are eating out 2 to 3 times a week now, with no plans to change. They're spending more. It used to be that they would not spend over 20. Now they'll spend up to 30 on a single meal. It's been very interesting statistics to see how the food business is expanding. But with that, let's take some questions from the audience. Again, go ahead and drop your question. We'll try to get to them as many as we can today. But there's a little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen there. I'm going to jump right in. So this person has a candy business, is looking to do bulk productions, probably for Ashley to kind of take, but made to order. A significant part of their business was out of their home, but they're looking at doing a commercial business, but it's quite costly. Is there a recommendation on the best type of commercial businesses for maybe a candy operator who wants to make that transition, but really costs sensitive?
I would say that's going to be everybody, right?
Right.
I mean, I hate to say it, but yeah, you have to have the investment, the capital to be able to go into one of these spaces. They're not free. You may want to some colleges or universities have like food innovation centers, so you may want to like look into local resources available to you, maybe through SBA. Some people are able to get like SBA loans. If you can show you have sales, you can get SBA loans to help support the upfront costs that you need to have to move into a commercial space. So you might want to look into those types of resources. And then you might want to look into co-packing. I mean, if you have the right sales, then you can have somebody else produce your food versus you produce it for a candy business. So those would be my
I see you trying to read it and I dismissed it. I apologize. I won't do that next time. But great answer. Again, I think that's a lot of people, right? How do you take that leap and all of that? Research the area, definitely try to look at what might make sense, but it's got to make sense cost wise. And we totally understand that. This next person has a concession stand business, and the regulations vary across municipalities on whether or not they have to use a commissary or not. He said he's reached out to some local food businesses to maybe share their kitchens with no luck. And the only two commissaries in his area, but they need 500 to 800 a month for 3 to 6 months up front. Any advice is greatly appreciated, this person says. I'm curious, is that kind of standard, that 3 to 6, and any advice for him?
So I wouldn't necessarily say the 3 to 6 up front, but they are like any rental type business. They're going to want a deposit to cover, a month, at least a month. And then typically it's prepaying for a month. So it's kind of, you can think of it like a lease or a rent is like, yeah, that is what you're going to have to expect to pay. Some operators may work with you and start you on a sliding scale, kind of scaling into a bigger billing plan. So I would maybe talk to the owner and operator of that kitchen to see if they have any starter plans or some sort of way that you can scale into a larger plan. I would also say just you might need to find a different kitchen that works better for you if you can't afford what they're asking. But again, I would keep in mind thinking about the value proposition that these kitchens are offering compared to you having to go do it on your own. Is they're covering all of the insurance and the regulation and the equipment and you just think about all of the things that they're paying for on your behalf, and that essentially is why those the cost is there.
Interesting. Going off of this is an interesting one. Is there such thing as creating a commercial kitchen within your home? Or finding, other home-based commercial kitchens? And is there like a cost advantage? Is that even possible, I guess?
Yeah, so it's regulated differently everywhere, so I can't give an answer and be like, here's how it is
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah.
Some states do have some local counties and health departments are typically regulated at the county level. And so your county may have a program that allows you to turn part of your home into a commercial kitchen and build a commercial space on your property. So yes, this is totally
Awesome.
possible. Where it gets a little sticky is code, making sure that you're they wouldn't allow it in an urban area where your neighbors are close by. But if you own property, it's more likely that they would allow it there. So you have to think about like the code violation. If you're having, if you're a delivery restaurant and people are coming to your house all the time, like this is why these codes exist, is to not impact other people that live around, because our commercial production space is loud. There's delivery drivers, there's pests, there's all these considerations that happen. So that's why it's regulated at the health department level. So I would reach out to your health department to ask what the options are for your municipality.
That's good advice, and I just learned something because I didn't even think about that of setting it up in your own. This one's for Kyle. This is kind of a straightforward question. I think I know the answer to, but this person asks, "Wait, isn't equipment part of general liability?" I think that's a really important question to understand, and maybe there's a difference of the equipment, but I'm curious.
So if you're trying to ensure, well, how about this? You answer it and I'll tell you if you're right or wrong. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No, I thought the answer was no. I thought the answer was
You're right. You're right. It is
if
no.
my equipment breaks, it's a whole different thing.
Now, let's say your equipment causes damage or injury to someone. That's
Maybe. Okay.
liability insurance. But
But
if
not
you're
my
insured,
actual
but
mixer.
your actual equipment, if it breaks down or it's burned up in a fire, that's property damage.
It's
So,
property damage. And then
yeah,
remind me, what is inland marine?
inland marine is property damage. That's not,
Okay,
the physical structure. It's your tools and equipment and
that's what I was thinking.
things.
Yes. Okay. I've worked a lot with farmers markets, right? And they have various things that come out to the farmers market, and that is that big one for them that I know. I think there was a question here about the kitchen door itself and using it to locate. I wonder if you could jump into that one, Ashley.
Yeah, so like I said, we've been around for 9 years. We launched the kitchen door probably 4 years ago. So it's still, I don't want to say fairly new, but we are ranking for all the major keywords in most cities. So when you commercial kitchen for rent, I need a shared kitchen, I need a kitchen, commissary near me, all these keywords. We're ranking in all the major cities, but I will say not we're, we don't have every commercial kitchen in the world on that site. If you know of commercial kitchens, please tell them about the site, because we the more that are on there, obviously the more valuable the site is. The question about responding, I think there was a question here is like that I've reached out and they do not respond. We actually are working a little bit on adding the ability for a response rate to be included, so that folks that are more responsive to leads through the kitchen door show up first in the ranking, so that we basically encourage the behavior of responding to food businesses, so that those listings show up first. So we are trying to do some like technology-based behavior things to ensure that that happens. Do we screen the locations? We do screen them to make sure they are a licensed commercial facility. But at this point, we can't really like come down on them if they're not responding, because we don't have a way of doing that. But we are looking for some solutions to make the site more responsive, and to encourage the right behaviors on the site to make it more powerful for you. So continue to reach out to those folks. Hopefully, if we make any changes, we're trying to make it better for the community.
Hey, I think that's fair. Everything's a work in progress. It makes me think though, I'm just curious, in your own experience, like what percentage are like full? Do commercial kitchens get full?
Yeah, they actually do. And we do have an ability with it. The folks that are food corridor members can turn their listings on and on through the
Interesting.
food
Yeah.
corridor.
Yeah.
So that when they are full, they take that listing off. We're moving towards that happening on the kitchen door for other people in the future. We don't have that feature yet. But that will be something coming. It's interesting that the industry by nature is high turnover, right? So food businesses either move into their own brick and mortar or they decide to shut down. And so there's turnover. And so having an active pipeline of new renters coming through is actually really critical to the business model of a shared kitchen. But there are kitchens, depending on their size, that do get full. So most shared kitchens are actually very small, 1,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet are pretty tiny, can only fit about 5 renters. And so when they get to that point, they don't have any hours available. More people are coming saying, hey, I need this day. And you're like, I don't have that day available. So they do get full, but the turnover continues to happen. So, you kind of have to go back on the kitchen door and say, see who's opened up and if there's space available.
So we have 2 questions about this. So this must be a big thing in your world. I don't know what it is, so bear with me. Is GFSI audit? And both the questions are, which ones have this? This one says some supermarkets require a product to be produced in a kitchen that has these certifications. What is this? And is this a big thing? And how do we find it?
Yeah, so it's the Global Food Safety Initiative. I think it's to make sure that the kitchen is following proper food safety protocols. So this is a little strange with certifications. Is like, does the kitchen need to be certified or does the food business need to be certified? Most of the time, it's the food business that needs to be certified and have those regulations. For selling into grocery stores, it's the retailer is going to have specific requirements. Sometimes we see retails that won't allow products from businesses that operate in shared kitchens because they can't secure everything in a shared kitchen just by its nature. So I'd be really careful in talking to supply or your distributors and where you're planning on selling your product to make sure that you are following those rules. But typically the onus is going to be on the food business to have a HACCP plan, for the food business to have their GFSI. But do ask these questions when you do go to a shared kitchen and ask them, what are your policies and procedures around food safety? Because you want to be operating in a kitchen that takes those things seriously and tries to strive for high bar for policies and procedures.
I did not know any of it, so great answer on you. This one's for Kyle, and it might be a specific claims question or policy question, so if you can't answer, I understand. This person says, I've been selling funnel cakes and deep fried Oreos for about 2 years. I want to add coffee to my menu. Would that mean changes to my GLI policy?
I wouldn't necessarily say that you would need to change your policy. Now, it's always a good idea to read because there could be exclusions for, selling hot beverages or something like that.
Is that something you could reach out to their flip person to
Yeah,
ask?
reach out to your agent or your flip person and be happy to review a policy for you. Now, if you are, I could speak specifically for a flip policy holder. Adding coffee to a menu where you're selling, some fried goods would not be an issue if you're a flip policy holder. But I can't speak for all those other insurance carriers out there. So it's always best to reach out to your agent.
Interesting, gotcha. Next one, probably back to Ashley. What's the difference between private units and shared space? Do private units within commissary kitchen typically include access to shared, or are we supposed to bring in our own equipment?
Ooh, good question. Is somebody signing a lease with Cloud Kitchens?
You can answer in the Q&A section there, everybody.
Just kidding. Don't actually answer that question.
Oh, okay, don't. I don't get it, so.
Uh, what this person is asking about is, so a shared space is shared infrastructure. And then within a shared space, sometimes there'll be what are called private pods, which essentially is a private unit within a shared commercial kitchen where you have your own lock and key and your own production space, and sometimes your own storage space where you can keep things overnight and you have your own lock and key and access point. So you might still be sharing access to the building. You might still be sharing parking, you might still be sharing bathrooms, you might be sharing office space, those types of things, but you're paying a long-term lease that's your own space within a shared kitchen. So many shared kitchens or commissary kitchens are adding these private pods or private spaces because it's part of it. You can think about a food business come into a shared kitchen saying, I need, 5 hours a week in the shared space, and they start scaling, and all of a sudden they're taking over more and more time in the shared kitchen. So the shared kitchen operator is like, I need to move them into a private pod so that I could free up the hours in the shared space for more businesses to come in. So it kind of becomes part of their pathway to growth out of the kitchen. But these pods can be a way to keeping those folks under the umbrella of a shared kitchen. So the pods are typically more expensive, but more of an exclusive production space for a food business.
Do you know if they bring in their own equipment at that point, or is it different probably?
It depends. So typically they'll have the access to the electrical be a setup, the plumbing will be a setup, but it could just be a shell with access to those things, and you're responsible for bringing the equipment. So that cost is your responsibility. And then some of them will either work with them to bring in equipment, or will have kind of a cook line that's ready to go that has the hood and it has, a basic infrastructure of a cook line, but doesn't have specialized equipment that your business might need. So it's very business specific, but it just depends on the kitchen and how that they set up. Most of the cloud kitchens, which is Travis Kalanick's company, the founder of Uber. He started cloud kitchens. Those are mostly shells where you're providing the funding and for the infrastructure for the equipment.
Gotcha. Man, I'm learning so much today. Just a wealth of knowledge. Just a few
Me too.
more. Yeah, just a few more. This one's an insurance question for you, Ryan. Or Ryan, Kyle. I'm sorry, I was reading the person's name. Sorry, Ryan. How do you cover volunteers at your site who work for the food vendor? Is there a way to cover volunteers under a policy?
Yeah, there a lot of your insurance policies will cover volunteers. You just need it's another one of those things that every policy is different, and you need to reach out to your agent and discuss the policy terms and conditions and exclusions with them, because some will, some won't. So it's different on every case. But it is
And I
something
would
that
say on the shared kitchen side of that, volunteers probably aren't going to be legally able to access the commercial kitchen because of the risk it brings to the other businesses in the kitchen. Because a volunteer is not food safety certified, and so there's risk associated with that. Typically, a shared kitchen will have policies about volunteers as well as family members and children not being able to come in, because these are commercial spaces, they're dangerous spaces, and so someone going in there that's a volunteer that's not trained on the equipment and that's not food safety certified would not necessarily be allowed to be in the kitchen working for your business. That would need to be an employee that is trained and under the policy. So I would be careful about that and actually talk to your operator and your insurance company about volunteers.
Gotcha. Just a few more here. Just generally, what are like some of the big components of a commercial kitchen? Like what do they offer?
Yeah.
Like
So
food storage, I know you mentioned.
yeah, I mean at the very, bottom, typically you'll have prep tables. You'll have usually a stove and an oven and a hood. You'll have hand washing sinks, and then you'll have access to cold storage, dry storage, and freezer space. Oftentimes parking, because you need a place to park vehicles. There is carts to move things around are really common in these spaces. Also, what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought because my dog's crying behind me. Sorry.
It's okay. We're going. We're already 10 over, so I appreciate everybody.
That would be the basic stuff. And then others would have, high-end pieces of equipment, things like Hobart mixers, or Kyle, you mentioned the tilt skillet, things that are going to help ramp up production. So those types of things are kind of like value added things. Like those would be the base things that are in most commercial commissary kitchens. But if you can find one, ice machines, another one, having access to ice, especially for food trucks, is pretty common. But yeah, the high end pieces of equipment, if you're trying to ramp up production, those are the pieces of equipment you want to be asking for. Do you have the tilt skillet so that I can make, gallons of sauce versus, pints of sauce? Like that's That's why you want the commercial kitchens, to get access to those great pieces of equipment.
Gotcha. There's one more, and I've read it 100 times, and I really am not 100% sure on it. I'm going to try it for you. We'll start, and this might be hard for you, Kyle, because of the type of business that Flip is in. We don't usually do commercial kitchen operators, owners. But the question is, does the kitchen operator list the renter as an additional insured on the insurance policy? I know it's kind of
Usually,
specific.
it depends on, I guess, depends on your rental agreement, but
Right.
it's usually the opposite way around, where the renter will list the commercial kitchen operator on their insurance policy.
That's what I would think as
Yeah.
well.
So we have a relationship with Flip. So Flip is our go-to for liability insurance, which is why we're here today working with Flip.
We
But
appreciate it.
yeah, we have an integration in the food corridor where people can apply for commercial liability insurance through the food corridor, and the policy is automatically updated and added and tracked within the food corridor. So keeping everybody compliant and in the know. In the rental process, we automatically add the additional assured, the kitchen as the additional insured on every food liability insurance policy for the food business.
Gotcha.
I
And
have
then,
seen kitchens though that do it reverse though, that they have their own food, they all have their own liability insurance, and they do add the food businesses as additional insured. And again, this is kind of like this idea of the patchwork, right? It's kind of layers upon layers. It's like you might as well like layer on your liability and my liability just in case something happens that's kind of like mushy in between those things. So I have seen that practice happen.
and then the second part to the question is, you might know, Ashley, might not to put you on the spot again. This is the operator responsible for FDA or Department of Health inspections, and more importantly, what happens if they fail those inspections on the part of, like, as the renter? Like, what do you do in that situation?
Yeah. So again, this is local level health department type policy. So the kitchen itself, the commercial kitchen, is responsible for being a licensed commercial facility. And they are regulated by the health department in the same way that any food business or restaurant would be. So they have to pass their health inspection. They have, inspectors come in, they have to follow all the hand wash, they have to have the sinks, they have to, be tracking the temperatures in the walk-ins, all of that kind of stuff has to, that's the responsibility of the owner and operator of the shared use kitchen. Additionally, and again, this kind of depends on it's a little different for every municipality, but additionally, the food business that operates in the shared kitchen is also responsible for their own business license and then their own health department certification. And so oftentimes the inspector will, when a new food business signs up to be a member of the kitchen, that there's a meeting that's happens where the inspector comes and watches the food business go through their production with that food business and then signs off saying, yes, you are now certified. So it's a certification within the certified kitchen for that food business. And again, the responsibility of the food business is their business. Like that's their job, that's their business. Like they are solely responsible for that. If they fail, then they lose their health department license. So yes.
Wow. Gosh, you are just a wealth of knowledge. Okay, we got one more. I'm sorry. I have a lease on my space that allows for subletting and was considering taking on renters to utilize the space as a commissary kitchen when not in use. How do you set up? Oh, this is actually for Kyle. How do you set up insurance for these businesses? Again, that's not necessarily a Flip thing, so I'm putting you on the spot. But how do you set up insurance for these businesses that we are subletting to?
You use the
So
food or just kidding.
there you go. Yes. And make sure that they have their own insurance, you have your own insurance, and make sure that you are an additional insured on their insurance, as probably as well as the commercial kitchen that's you're subletting from.
Yeah,
And
and
use
hopefully
food
share
court.
it and check out our toolkit because that's going to help you kind of think through a lot of the business questions that you need to ask.
Got it. Well, I cannot thank you both enough for your time. I know we went over. I know you're both very busy. Really, really great attendance today. Really, really great questions. We absolutely wish the best to every food operator out there, whether you're a commercial kitchen owner or a food business working in one. Really, a hard business to work in, but you've got amazing resources in both of these companies. So thank you so much, Ashley from the Food Corridor, Kyle from Flip. This will be available for recording. Should go out to everyone on the email list, and then we'll post on the website. Go subscribe to Food Corridor and check out some of these links, all kinds of stuff. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you all. Thanks for
All right.
coming.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.